Hi, I'm Dr. Hannah, and today we're going to talk about the difference between the Dexcom G7 and the Libre 3 Plus sensor. I have type 1 diabetes and I've been wearing a CGM for over 10 years now, and I've tried a lot of them on the market, but I spent most of my time wearing the Libre 3 and the Dexcom G7, and I wanted to talk about the differences that I've noticed between them and the similarities. So let's dive in. The first thing I want to talk about is the sensor wear time, because this has recently changed. So typically the Dexcom G7 is a 10-day sensor and the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus is a 15-day sensor. However, Dexcom has just released Dexcom G7 15-day, which is a separate sensor from the G7 itself, and that one does last 15 days. Now, we're seeing that they can last the same time depending on which one you're getting prescribed. Dexcom is still making the G7 10-day and the G7 15-day. The second thing that matters a lot to people I know is the warm-up time. The Dexcom G7 has a 30-minute warm-up time, meaning that when I apply the sensor, it takes 30 minutes of wait time before it's going to show me my first reading. And the Freestyle Libre has a 60-minute wait time. I've talked to a lot of friends with type 1 diabetes or friends that wear sensors, and they've said that this is important to them. But personally, I don't really notice a difference. I feel like I'm able to feel my blood sugars pretty well. I can always finger stick during that warm-up time if I need to. And so to me, it doesn't really make a big difference. It wouldn't be the reason I would choose one over the other. The next one is the glucose reading frequency. And this is something that I don't hear people talk about, but to me, I think this makes a little bit more of a difference. The glucose reading frequency is basically how often it takes your blood sugar and puts it on the graph so you can see it. And for the Dexcom G7, it will update your graph every 5 minutes, and you'll be able to see the changes every 5 minutes on the G7. Now, the Freestyle Libre actually does this minute by minute, and so every minute you'll see a new blood glucose on the graph. I like that personally. I think that our blood sugar, when my blood sugar is changing quickly, especially if I've pre-bolus for a meal, I'm trying to wait to see when it starts moving so I can start eating. For me, maybe my patience isn't there, and the 5 minutes really feels like it makes a difference. But I don't know, again, that this is something that would make me choose one over the other personally. I can imagine some people wouldn't notice a difference and some people would. So it really is a personal preference there. The third thing I want to talk about is the size of the sensor. They're very similar. The G7 and the Freestyle Libre are both circular, round and thin, almost like a penny that you would wear on your body. I find that the Freestyle Libre is quite a bit thinner than the Dexcom G7, but wearing both, again, day to day, I haven't noticed a huge difference between the two. I think they're both so much smaller than the G6, for example, or other sensors before that I'm just really excited about how small they are now, and the difference to me doesn't make as big of a difference. If I was an athlete doing some type of contact sport, perhaps the Freestyle Libre would be a better choice because of the thinness. I find that the Freestyle Libre probably gets caught on things a little bit less often than the G7 because of the thickness of it. I think that it's important that we like the one that we pick. If we have the option to pick based on our insurance, if I had to choose, I would say I like the Freestyle Libre Plus better. I have noticed a difference as well between the glue that they use, adhesive that sticks to your skin. For me, the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus glue and adhesive works so much better than the Dexcom G7. I almost always have to wear the circular patches that come in the Dexcom G7 boxes in order to keep mine on for the full 10 days. But with the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus, I can go a full 15 days without needing an extra patch or sticker, and I have really good adherence, and sometimes it even hurts when I pull it off at the end because it's still sticking so well. And I love that because it's not a worry, it's not something I think about on the day-to-day anymore with it. The last piece that I think is interesting is the difference in ability to calibrate. So the Dexcom G7 allows you to do a finger stick glucose. If it is different or similar to the G7, you can put that in to the sensor and it registers that data, and it may make adjustments based on what you're entering. That can be helpful. Sometimes these sensors do get off quite a bit, and so I find that useful. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus does not have the option for you to calibrate. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't check my finger to make sure that it's in range or similar to where it says it is, but you can't put that information into the Freestyle Libre app in order for it to use to make a change in what you're currently seeing. I also haven't found this feature to be hugely impactful to my glucose management. However, I can see if I was on an automated insulin delivery pump that it may be helpful, because if my sensor is running high or running low by a significant amount, it will be dosing insulin based on that level, and the ability to change it would then help it improve the insulin dose that it's making in real time. That could be a benefit. That's not something that I'm recommending to my patients right now. I think both are really good options. I really like both of them, but that is something to be considerate of. I think that would be put on the pros and cons list here. The last piece I'd like to go over is accuracy, because this is so important to me and a lot of my friends with diabetes that are using these sensors for insulin dosing, but also for people with prediabetes who are using this to learn what foods work for their body. When a sensor is less accurate, it makes it harder to trust the data that we're getting and understand how we can make changes in our life. When we look at head-to-head studies for the Freestyle Libre versus the G7, what we're seeing is they have similar accuracy in general. In studies where people wore both G7 and Libre 3 Plus sensors at the same time, we saw that they had similar accuracy ratings for exercise, plane flights, and generally throughout the time of wear. I think that's helpful to understand because we want a sensor that's going to work for us, and often we hear somebody doesn't like this sensor, someone doesn't like that sensor because they had a bad experience with it. So I really like looking at these big studies and these larger data pools to extract answers on that. Over 90% of readings for the G7 and the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus fall within the acceptable range for making treatment decisions with insulin. Overall, both G7 and Freestyle Libre are excellent choices for a continuous glucose monitor. I feel like I have liked wearing both, and I would happily wear one or the other if my insurance covered it. I think that it's helpful to understand that often what drives people's choices for these sensors is pricing. It's not uncommon for a health insurance company to cover one brand versus the other. I'm lucky in that my health insurance company does cover both options right now. However, I'm choosing to use the Freestyle Libre Plus because it is significantly cheaper from a monthly copay. And for me, because I know that I like both, because I've used both, it makes sense to go with the cheaper option. There is a trend in my experience that the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor copays for many insurance companies are lower, and it's really quite simple to find out by just calling your insurance company, asking for the pharmacy department, and having them run the numbers for you. It can also be helpful to log into your insurance website. Often they'll have a pharmaceutical search engine where you can search both and look for average pricing at different pharmacies in your area, and that's how I was able to find this information for me. I hope this video was helpful and you found what you were looking for in these comparisons. Overall, again, I really like both. I think that there can be a lot of fear around continuous glucose monitors. There can be a lot of fear about switching brands of diabetes technology, and it's helpful to understand what's out there, what works for people, what we're seeing in the studies, and that information can be empowering as we move towards making decisions that work best for us. If you are someone with type 1 diabetes and you would like support with the mindset around blood sugar management, having diabetes, what that means for life and identity and moving forward, I have an online course that is designed to help walk you through navigating that and finding a way that feels good. I find that I'm able to live a life with diabetes where I manage it, but I don't feel that it's a huge burden on my life. And I think it's possible for us to all get there with the right tools and knowledge and perspectives. And this course was designed to walk you through finding a perspective that works for you individually. And if you want to learn more about sensor placement, I'll link the next video up. It's a very popular video that I have on sensor placement, and it's labeled for Freestyle Libre, but I use the same sensor placement techniques with the Dexcom G7, and so it can be used for either one. I hope this was helpful. If you found value in this, it would mean the world to me if you could like, subscribe, and comment to this video. It helps me share this information with others and makes a big difference so that I'm able to continue sharing tips like this from my personal experience and what I've learned in the clinic. Thanks for sticking to the end, and you can check out this next video if you're interested.